What's up, guys? Welcome to the Win Daily Sports YouTube video on Monday Night Football. We've got the Dallas Cowboys visiting the New York Giants, and I'm going to be breaking down tonight's slate for Monday Night Football. So this is a new video that we're doing, a new segment for me on Monday Night Football. We're going to be talking about value and punt plays, favorite stacks, and my contrarian play of the game. So first things first. So Monday night action, we've got the Giants and we've got the Cowboys. So all the prices, again, are for DraftKings specifically. And I want to talk about, my first punt play and value play, and that's actually with Cody Latimer of the New York Giants. So he's coming in at the cheap discounted price of right around $1,200 on the slate as a captain, and in the flex, he's at $800. So I think that he's actually someone that you want to play as a punt play because he lets you squeeze in all of these Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys are favored in this game. They are on the road, but they are clearly the better of the two teams. So I do think that the Dallas Cowboys will eventually win this game, and I think that it's going to be an offensive onslaught for this Dallas Cowboys, which is why you want to fit in a guy like Cody Latimer because he helps open up a lot in your lineups. Sterling Shepard has already been ruled out for Monday Night Football, so Latimer should see similar work to what he saw in Week 8. In Week 8, Latimer played in 44.6% of the snaps, and he ran 26 routes. And he's actually priced lower than Benny Fowler, who's actually priced up a little bit higher than him, up at 1,600. And it doesn't really make much sense because he's actually played more than Fowler has in the past week. He had 74 receiving yards on 8 targets back in Week 1 when the Giants first played the Dallas Cowboys. So I think that Cody Latimer, from a Giants perspective, is the cheapest guy you can add in out of any of these players that can help fit into your lineup and really help you fit in your studs. So that being said, my favorite stack of this week is obviously talking about the Dallas Cowboys. So the Dallas Cowboys are favored by 6.5 points in the game with a total of 48.5 points. So building around the Cowboys is definitely the key for you to take down this showdown slate. So the Giants are allowing opposing passers to throw for 8.5 yards per attempt, third highest in the NFL, and 7.6 yards per attempt over their past 3 games. Dak Prescott, $10,400 on DraftKings, is averaging 8.6 yards per attempt this season. So you're going to want Dak Prescott with his 2 best receivers, Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. So infiltrating the lineups, you want to make sure you have some Dak exposure. You want to make sure you have his exposure to his 2 main receivers in Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. So if we add those guys in here to the flex position, so for just as we kind of do this build here, we'll throw Amari Cooper in there in the captain spot. We'll throw Dak in there as another flex spot position. So again, now if we're doing an onslaught of Dallas Cowboys, we want to make sure that we have some Ezekiel Elliott exposure as well. And just one last thing on the receivers. Over the past 4 weeks, the Giants have allowed the 6th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. So I think that playing both Cooper and Gallup is going to give you a positive expected value moving forward. So again, Ezekiel Elliott can also be added to this stack. So he comes in at 11,600, and it's just, again, you're really just dominating the total market share of the Dallas Cowboys in terms of touchdowns. If you play Ezekiel Elliott and Dak Prescott, you're going to have a very strong chance of getting all of the touchdowns that the Cowboys could possibly score. So I really like combining those 2 guys together. If you look at the Giants at home, they've allowed the 7th most rushing attempts to running backs this season, 30.8 at 4.7 yards per attempt. And Elliott has scored a touchdown or at least had 100 rushing yards in every career game versus the Giants. Then again, to kind of wrap up the lineup here with a Cowboys onslaught, you want to add in either like a Cowboys defense or a kicker. Brett Meyer is one of the options here as well. So I think that he is someone that you can add in here at $4,000. The kicking game, I think, is going to be pretty good for the Dallas Cowboys. And if you think Dallas is going to win, they're probably going to be in opportunities to score. So again, Brett Meyer at $4,000 is a nice way to round out a lineup that is heavily featuring Dallas Cowboys over the New York Giants. If you actually look at the Giants over the past 3 weeks, they've allowed an average of 15.5 fantasy points per game to opposing defenses. So that's also why I like the Dallas Cowboys defense as another option. And then talking about their kicker specifically in Brett Meyer, if you look at the New York Giants, he has averaged field goal attempts 2 times per game. Brett Meyer has, and the Giants rank 6th worst in the NFL against kickers over the past 4 weeks. So here's a lineup build that you can actually do pretty easily. And if you really want to get, fill out the rest of that salary, you can actually swap out Amari Cooper with Ezekiel Elliott. You put Ezekiel Elliott in the captain spot, and you can really dominate a lot of the targets there. And then you can actually throw in Amari Cooper, you can throw in Amari Cooper So you can do some pretty cool things. This is actually where you can actually use your entire budget. If you are really interested, and you can actually have a whole Dallas Cowboys onslaught with Cody Latimer and the flex there as well, and use all your salary. So that's one way to be contrarian, I think. But I do think that it's okay to leave remaining salary for sure, especially with these slates. So don't necessarily feel like you need to spend it all. But this is just an example of a GPP lineup that's really focused on the Dallas Cowboys and with the punt play of Cody Latimer coming in from the Giants. So then again, speaking of contrarian plays, we're going to be going over some of my contrarian plays, and one of them is actually using Gallup in the captain spot. So if you use Gallup in the captain spot, so looking at Gallup versus Amari Cooper will just most likely just draw more ownership. That's because it just makes more sense. He's the number one wide receiver on the team. But if you look at the target share, they actually have a very similar target sharing based on the games that Michael Gallup has played. And if you just take out the game where Amari Cooper got hurt right in the beginning of the game, they're both averaging right around 8 targets per game. So I'm not so sure that, that Amari Cooper is such a smash spot better than Michael Gallup, when I think that realistically they can both probably finish up the same. So if you put Gallup in the captain spot and you put Amari Cooper, then you can also fit in more guys. Like you can play in Ezekiel Elliott still, and then if you, let's say you wanted to move up from a defense, you could have 6,100, so you can end up playing, for example, the Cowboys defense as someone I suggested as well, and you have some remaining salary. So there's a couple of different ways you can kind of tweak around this. This is something I would probably, with all my Cowboys onslaughts, I would try to kind of probably mix up the captain a little bit. I don't think it's super obvious, and that there's a lot of options that could go in this particular game, but I would say that I would definitely lean on the receivers, either with Amari Cooper or Michael Gallup, and especially Gallup. I think that he'll, out of their, the Dallas Cowboys, all of the guys that have big games, we've seen it from Gallup in the past. I think Gallup actually probably has just the highest chance of having a big game, but he's also going to come in at the lowest owned. So I think Gallup is a perfect guy for the captain spot for this DFS lineup. Now, going ahead to kind of just being more some of my favorite contrarian plays, that's going heavy on the Giants offense. Obviously, people are going to be swaying away from the Giants offense because obviously they have struggled this season with Daniel Jones a little bit. They haven't been as great, and they have a good tough matchup against the Dallas Cowboys defense that's been pretty good this year. So Saquon Barkley at 11,400 figures to be less owned than Elliott, but I think that Barkley has a pretty high chance that he could actually outscore Ezekiel Elliott in this game. If you look at his 3 career games versus the Dallas Cowboys, Barkley has surpassed 100 yards from scrimmage. In the game, if the game projects the Giants as trailing, Barkley could see a ton of work in the passing game as well. And then another guy I really, really like in this matchup is Evan Engram, the tight end from the New York Giants. He's probably one of the guys I'm highest on in terms of pass catchers from the New York Giants. And that's because in 3 games against the Giants, in his last 3 games against the Cowboys actually, he's averaged 88 receiving yards, 7.6 receptions, and 9.6 targets. So, going heavy on Giants players such as Barkley and Evan Engram, stacking them together, I think is a contrarian way to get part of the Giants offense versus this Dallas Cowboys defense. And that's kind of what I'm looking at from in terms of those players. And then kind of going into the nitty-gritty, the deeper guys. I know I obviously referenced Cody Latimer. I think that he's a deep contrarian play and also a great punt play. Looking at a guy like Randall Cobb, he's coming at 4,800. He had 4 or 5 targets for 69 yards and 1 touchdown in his first meeting versus the Giants. And Golden Tate obviously was suspended in their first matchup. So he's at 6,800, and I think he's obviously in a good... He's probably the most contrarian playing like the captain spot, because if you just look at his, targets and his numbers, he could easily lead the Giants in receptions and targets. He just needs to find the end zone. That's really it for Golden Tate. Darius Slayton at 5,700 is also another player that, could really benefit from his big play ability. He's at 5,700. He leads the Giants in total air yards, despite the fact that he has not played in every single game this year. He hasn't started playing since week 3. And he has an average ADOT of 18 yards. So he's getting targeted down the field. And if there's any player that's going to break open the slate, it could be a Darius Slayton on 2 big, deep touchdown passes from Daniel Jones. I'm not really playing Daniel Jones. I just don't think that there's any way that he really was going to outscore a guy like Dak Prescott. So I'd rather just play Dak. So I'm not really on the Daniel Jones bandwagon, but I do like, kind of sprinkling his weapons here and there as part of a contrarian approach. So thanks for listening, guys. And again, you want to make sure you go check out windailysports.com for the rest of the write-ups. A lot of great stuff, especially talking about the Showdown Slate tonight on Monday Night Football. And also make sure you go check out Monkey Knife Fight to capitalize on some of our favorite prop bets for Monday night. For me personally, I'm taking the overs on the Saquon Barkley fantasy points, which is at 21.5, and Amari Cooper fantasy points at 17.5. And if you see any ones on Michael Gallup, I would definitely take the overs on those as well. So thanks for watching, guys.